We are the Tribulation Saints.
What we're trying to do is learn the timelines of the tribulation hour, the wrath, the resurrection, and the return of Jesus. And we're trying to figure it out according to scriptures and see how close we can get to understanding this. Let's go all the way back up to where I'm at here and let's just go over some of this. You guys remember this from last week? There's 4 little timelines here. And what I was trying to get you to understand was since Christ rose from the grave, all the way into the millennial kingdom on the far right, and right over here, where does the resurrection rapture take place? And I want us to understand this a lot better. So here is the wrong way that they've been showing us, and that I learned my whole life in terms of when the church age ends, when the resurrection rapture takes place, and when the return of Christ comes back physically to the earth, and when the millennial kingdom starts. I was always told that the tribulation includes the wrath, that is all wrath, and there's no difference between the tribulation and wrath. The tribulation is the wrath, right? And the resurrection is going to happen before the tribulation. Many of us were taught that since we were kids. How many of you were taught right in the beginning that you're going to go through the tribulation? Or did you learn that over the course of years? How many of you learned later that you are going to go? How many of you learned immediately that you were going to suffer in tribulation? None of us did we? We all had to learn later that we're going to suffer, right? So we all were taught the wrong way. So yeah, we all learned it later, and it's not something that we were taught in the beginning. The point is, this is what we all learned right here. This is what we learned. This is how we learned it, okay? This is the correct way, however, all right? This is the biblical way right here, that the church age actually includes the tribulation, and there's a difference between the tribulation and the wrath, right? There's a difference. So that's what we're going to be looking at a little bit closer here. That the tribulation and the wrath are grouped together in these modern teachings. Here we have the tribulation and wrath put together. Okay, this is really what they're teaching us. But the truth of the matter is the resurrection rapture happens in between these things. Okay, and the gap that they're claiming, which is 3.5 years, is not really 3.5 years. It's really 75 days. That 3.5-year gap between the resurrection rapture and Armageddon coming back down, it's not 3.5 years, but 75 days. Okay? Blessed is he who makes it to the 1,335-day mark. He's talking about people that survive all the tribulation and all of the wrath, the people that survive the 3.5 years and the extra 75 days. That's what Daniel's talking about when he says, blessed is he who makes it to the 1,335-day marks, because they're going to be entering into the millennial kingdom in their natural bodies. They're not going to die. Okay, now some people sent me an email and says I'm not saying that they're saved. What you got to understand, guys, is God's got to have somebody to destroy later, doesn't he? Okay, just because some of these people make it over here, just because some of these nations make it over here, does not mean they're going to go to heaven. Okay, I'm not saying that blessed means that they're saved, and blessed means that they're redeemed, or blessed means that they've had their sins forgiven, or blessed just means they didn't die during this part. How many of you know that's what blessed means? That's all blessed means. They didn't die during this part and they get to go on. Okay, we know from Scripture that God blesses and shows mercy to the wicked in Scripture. That doesn't mean they're going to go to heaven. That doesn't mean their sins are forgiven. That doesn't mean anything like that. Or you could keep that on the back burner, keep that idea on the back burner, and add it to this idea that he's talking about Israel. Blessed are the Israelites who don't die during this time, because they will be redeemed from their sins. And only the ones that God has handpicked, Only the ones that God has particularly predestined and that he has ordained to survive the wrath of God, that he has foreknown, that he has chosen to save, like he's chosen you from the foundation of the world. He chose you to save. He's going to save some Israelites, and maybe he's referring to them. Blessed are those who make it to the 1335 day. Why do the unsaved get to repopulate the earth? Okay, I got it. Revelation 20 reveals first resurrection for those killed for not taking the mark, and 1,000 years later, rest of the dead are raised, dead raised first, then we who are alive. No, that's not talking about two different. The dead and the living are talking about the first resurrection. Paul says, in the twinkling of an eye, the dead will be raised, and then we which are left alive will be caught into the air. That's talking about the first resurrection. Both the dead and the living will be caught into the first resurrection. The two resurrections are talking about two groups of people. Two groups of people, right? The first resurrection is blessed because they get to go into heaven. The second resurrection is for the dead. They don't get to go into heaven. That's kind of my understanding on that. I do not know. Why is God going to let the heathen nations repopulate the earth and then destroy them later? Because he's promised his son to rule over them. That's the only thing I can think of. We get in the Old Testament that he'll rule over the heathen nations with a rod of iron, and we get to rule over the heathen nations with him. Some of us, right? So it's just God's going to make a point to give his son a kingdom. It's going to last for 1,000 years. He's going to prove his righteousness. He's going to rule with authority and righteousness and power, and that's God's will. God's will is to let it go on for 1,000 years, to give his son a kingdom for 1,000 years. God could, how many of you guys know God could easily destroy everybody right here at Armageddon? God could easily destroy everybody right here at Armageddon, but why does he not? Because he's going to give his son 1,000-year period to rule over everybody first. Right? You guys get me on that? You understand? For 1,000 years, God's going to withhold the destruction of the heathen nations because his son is going to rule over them first. That's the only answer that makes sense to me. Okay? Then God is going to destroy everybody at the second resurrection because that only the ones in the first resurrection are blessed. It says, blessed is he who is part of the first resurrection. He shall not taste the second death. That means the people in the second resurrection who come against God, who try to destroy God, are going to have fire called down upon them. They are going to be killed. And they're going to be raised after that and thrown into the lake of fire. Right? That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. It makes sense to me. I think that's accurate. Okay. So why is he going to let it go on? Because Christ is going to be ruling over them for 1,000 years. And that's the purpose. Okay, let's take a look at this a little bit better. The trumpets. Now, I wanted to show you guys this because I'm trying to figure out, when does the first trumpet blow? When do the seals open up? When does the last trumpet blow? When's the resurrection rapture? How does it all tie together? And I came up with this chart. Is it 100% accurate? I don't know. I think it's pretty close. I like it. There's another way I've got it broken down here too. Well, just quickly, I'll show you. Now, I'm not saying the first seals started opening. The first four seals started opening way back when Christ first went up and received the scroll. It's possible. I think it's more likely that the scrolls are starting to open up. Here's the two different ways I have the seals opening up in terms of the six seals. When the tribulation starts, this is the last 3.5 years. 3.5 years right here. 1,260 days. Here's 75 days. When it begins right here, that could be where the seals are really... Now, you would think that seal 1 is the guy conquering everything. Complete and total conquering of the world. 100% control over everything. Seal 1 combines the two beasts in Revelation 13, the first beast and the second beast working together, forcing a mark, conquering everything. They're conquering religion. They're conquering medicine right now is being conquered. Education's being conquered. political systems being conquered, the religious systems that's what the first seal is. 100% control. So we're going to have that have happened in the last 3.5 years. So if you want to look at it like the seals begin to start opening up at the beginning of the church age, and by the time we get here, we have all these seals completed. You see what I'm saying? Does everybody get that? Because what we have throughout the church age is we have pestilence and wars and starvation and but it's all building up. It's all building up in this last 100 years, guys. In the last 100 years, we have had more wars, more pestilence, and more everything else than ever in history. So it's obvious that things are getting more and more as time goes on, because this whole entire church age right here, this whole entire church age right here, this whole thing is nothing but 2,000 years, right? The reason I just have it disproportionately set for the tribulation period, because I wanted to kind of emphasize when the trumpets blow. It's obviously this tribulation period is not 1,000 years long. It's disproportionate, but I wanted to just emphasize these time periods, and that's why they're the size they are. But down at the bottom, when you see the seals opening, the first 4 seals may be completed at the beginning of the fourth tribulation period. Because I see the tribulation period being more about the 5th seal. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's possible that these first 4 seals take many, 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 many years to develop. Many, many years to develop. It's possible. I'm not saying I know this. And then when we get to that last 3.5 year tribulation period, they're all set and we're entering into the 5th seal. You know what the 5th seal is, right? Everybody knows what the 5th seal is, right? The persecution of the saints. The greatest persecution of Christians and dissidents and believers and Jews the world has ever seen. So we have to have the first 4 seals done before the 5th seal's open. And we know during the tribulation period, that's going to be the killing of the Christians. If in the tribulation we have the killing of the Christians, and we know that's the 5th seal, then the first 4 seals got to be completely open by then. That's got to take place sometime in the beginning of the tribulation. Now, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is towards the end of the tribulation period. Everybody following me? That was just one perspective that I've come up with. And I've got another perspective. Here's the other perspective. You guys with me? For the last 2,000 years, for the last 1,800 or 1,900 years, there's just been beginning of sorrows, kind of breadcrumb reflections. There has been pestilence, there has been wars, but it hasn't really been nothing compared to what's going to happen in the seals. Right? And the seals are starting to open at the last 3.5 year time period. Okay? That's when we're going to see the conquering and the major wars and the major pestilence and the major starvation. That at the beginning of this 3,000 years, it could be that all of these seals, the first 4 seals, are going to I kind of want to say that you got to have seal 1 completed at the beginning. Why? Because the Antichrist is going to rule and reign for 42 months. That's given to him. That means seal 1 has to be done. Seal 1 is about somebody who's coming to conquer. This conquering that the seal 1's going to do has to be at least 42 months. Right? Is it possible that the conquering has been developing and building and getting ready more and more, and the Antichrist, what does the Bible say? He continues for 42 months. So the Antichrist is only going to continue for 42 months. That doesn't mean seal 1 has not been developing or seal 1 has not been into effect. It's possible that the conquering and the tyranny and all that's been in place. The mark of the beast is developing, guys. A lot of people don't understand this, but the mark of the beast is developing way before the Antichrist takes power, because he's going to continue. The second beast is the one that mentions the mark of the beast. I know that. But he's working in the same power as the first beast. They're both working the same types of works. And all it says is that the second beast causes them to take a mark. It doesn't say the second beast created the mark, does it? How many of you understand that Revelation 13 is not saying that the second beast created a mark? He makes an image of the beast. But the second beast in Revelation 13, it doesn't say that he began to make a mark. It just says he causes them to take a mark. You guys with me? So you got to understand that. Okay. So sometime during the tribulation hour here, 3.5 year period, sometime during that period, seal 1 has got to be complete. And it may be that seal 1 is completed right there at the beginning of that time period. And then we have this period of time that's taking place where these other 4 seals are being completed, or they're already all completed right here at the same time. And then all we're doing is waiting for this last seal, seal 5, to take place in the tribulation period. Okay, so I don't know how much that makes sense or not. I kind of like this better, this one a little bit better, because I think that we can justify seeing the conquering and the wars and the pestilence and the starvation have happened for the last 2,000 years. And once it hits that last 3.5 year period, once we get to this phase right here, all of these 4 seals are going to be completed. In other words, 25% of mankind is going to die right in this area right here. That's the 4th horse. The 4th horse says 25% of the population of the earth is going to be dead. It's going to die because of these 4. Now, could that be that 25% throughout the ages of man has died because of the consequences of these 4 horses over the years? That's possible, isn't it? Could it be that suddenly 25% of the earth dies within a day or a couple of days or a week when we got the 4th horse? The 4th horse in particular talks about the same kinds of things that these other horses are talking about. In other words, it's repeating the same thing. Seal 4 talks about war. Seal 2 talks about war, right? Seal 4 talks about hunger. Well, seal 3 talks about barely being able to afford food. It's going to get expensive, right? So seal 4 talks about killing with the sword and all these things, and hunger and pestilence, okay? It sounds like seal 4 is saying that these other 3 horses are developing, but when seal 4 hits, it's all going to hit. It's all going to be done at the same time. And I think that by the time we enter into the tribulation period here, before we get to the actual killing of Christians in America, because in America, you're going to see Christians killed in America. You're going to see Christians killed in America, and when you do, you're going to know that you're in the 5th seal. Brothers and sisters, you're about to see the 5th seal open. You know, we can debate all we want about what the first 4. Does it open here? Do they open here? What, did the first 4 open here and they're all open at the beginning of the tribulation? Or do they open during the tribulation? We can debate all we want, but one thing's for sure. When that 5th seal opens up and we get towards the end of the tribulation, when we see the 5th seal opened up, we're going to see the killing of Christians in America. Okay? That's absolutely going to happen. Absolutely going to happen. I wanted to show you this, and I want you to see how the trumpets that are opening up during the tribulation period are really in the 5th seal. Can you see that with me? I've always told you there's overlapping between the trumpets of the wrath. I haven't even showed you the vials of wrath. The vials of wrath happen over here. That's all the vials of wrath. I didn't show you the wrath, the vials of wrath yet. The vials of wrath are over here in the wrath, right? So this is what we got here in terms of the first 4 trumpets, the 5th trumpet, inside the 5th seal. Okay, let's take a look at this as close as I can. Let's look at this closely. Okay, now you see in the tribulation hour, that we're going to have 3.5 year period. We're going to have a 3.5 year period here. This is where the 3.5 year period begins. This is where the 3.5 year period ends. I'm not saying that the first 4 trumpets happen at the beginning. It's possible that it does. I'm thinking in terms of towards the end of this thing, because, guys, trumpet 6 is a war that kills 1/3 of mankind. That happens right before the 7th trumpet. That's right at the very end of this thing, right? Now, the 5th trumpet is only 5 months long. That means when that 5th trumpet blows, see the 5 right here? That means there's 5 months left, in my opinion, before the end comes. And sometime during that 5-month period, the war takes place, which is why we got this circle here. The 7th trumpet is just the resurrection rapture. There's nothing major that happens. You guys understand it's just an earthquake, some voices, some thunders, some lightning, and a transfer of the kingdom, and that's when Christ takes over. Okay? There is nothing majorly devastating that takes place at the 7th trumpet. It's just the resurrection rapture. The big trouble happens in the 5th and 6th trumpet. The 7th trumpet's called a woe because there's no hope after that blows. Whoever's left behind's dead. It's a woe, woe, woe. Woe to those who are not caught in the resurrection rapture. And blessed are those who make it past the 1,335 days. So it's amazing that there's no hope for people, but then there's a little group of people who are going to be blessed who actually do make it. Anyway, the point is the first 4 trumpets, I think it comes towards the end of the tribulation period, and I'll tell you why. Because when these first 4 trumpets blow, the whole world is going to be in chaos, and the economic system is going to be absolutely on its head. And I don't see how the Antichrist is going to have anything really to rule over, because it's going to, well, it's only 1/3 of the oceans, it's 1/3 of the ships, it's 1/3 of the creatures. It's possible that these first 4 trumpets do happen at the beginning of the tribulation, and that's what causes the mark to come into play even more, and the monetary systems to fall, and the digital money to be issued. It may be something as catastrophic as the first 4 trumpets to cause something like that to happen. But my belief at this point, and I'm flexible on this, is that it's towards the end of the tribulation period that these trumpets are going to blow. And towards the end of the tribulation, we got 5 months left for this trumpet right here, which is those stinging scorpions. For 5 months, they torment men. It gives us the time. It says 5 months. We know how long that is. And then how long is a war that kills 1/3 of mankind? I mean, how long does a nuclear war take that just nukes everybody and kills billions of people? I give it, 4 weeks? Couple of weeks? Now, this isn't, I'm not saying that this is the only way to look at this, because there's other ways I look at it. Let's look at some of those other ways that I look at it, because it's not the only way. This is not the only way I look at it. Let's take a look at some other options here, because I was drawing this myself here. Okay, here's the basic overview, and we're trying to see, how these, you see this right here. Okay, here's a couple of different ways to look at it, and there's another way to look at it too. I don't know if you can see that good enough, but this does not overlap. This is completed. In other words, the first 4 trumpets come to a completion, then the 5th trumpet is opened, and then the 6th trumpet is opened. So I don't have it overlapping. But here's one idea where the first 4 trumpets takes 2 years. See over here on the right side? This is just an idea. The first 4 trumpets could take 2 years out of this 3.5 year time period. And the 5th trumpet is 5 months. That we know. So that's right over here. 5 equals 5 months. And the 6th trumpet, we don't know how long that war is going to take at the 6th trumpet. The 7th trumpet is a war, is the resurrection. There's nothing really, there's no time to that. So here, this last circle is a war. We don't know how, I can't imagine that being very long. Now, I'm just guessing. Just like I'm guessing how long the first 4 trumpets take. The only thing I know for sure is that the 5th trumpet is 5 months long. So you see over here on the right side, this particular analysis is the first 4 trumpets take 2 years. So the next thing I have on here is this particular view here, where, okay, let's take a look at this one. Now we see a little bit different scenario where the first 4 trumpets being as devastating as they are, because you got to understand, when that happens, the whole world is never going to be the same. We may have a long time period here in the Great Tribulation hour, this 3.5 year period, where none of that's actually happened yet, until we get to the end of this. And then the first 4 trumpets is actually like a 2-week period. See over here on the right? Trumpets 1 to 4 takes only 2 weeks. 1/3 of the ships are destroyed. 1/3 of the sun is blocked out. 1/3 of man, 1/3 of the water is poisoned, right? So that would put, see that little tiny circle right there is what we're looking at, would be the first 4 trumpets. It's a little tiny circle right there because it's only 2 weeks and not 2 years. And of course, trumpet 5, we know how long that is. There's no secret to trumpet 5. That's the only thing I can really say with confidence that I know, what's going on, because the Bible tells us it's 5 months. I don't have to guess. Trumpet 7 is not a time factor. It's just the resurrection rapture. And trumpet 6, we don't know how long that war is going to be either, but it can't be that long. I'm assuming it's less than 5 months. I don't think it takes 5 months to nuke everybody. I think the 5 months we know. Okay, so that would be another scenario. Instead of the first 4 trumpets taking 2 years, it takes 2 weeks. So that's another way of looking at it. So I thought that was interesting to show you guys some of the concepts and ideas that we have here. Another possibility is that, okay, 3.5 years, this is a 3.5 year period out of the church age. I know I got it drawn way back here, but don't let that fool you. Out of the entire church age, this big loop is only 3.5 years. It's disproportionate, that's okay. It's possible that inside this tribulation period, at the very beginning of it, we get the first 4 trumpets. Okay, it happens at the beginning. Honestly, those first 4 trumpets, if you read it, it's one event that takes place. I'm fully convinced that the first 4 trumpets are not separate events. Go read it, meditate on it, and ask yourself, is that a volcano exploding or some meteor falling from the solid dome above, hitting the earth? And because whatever those first 4, that is something that happens. And when it happens, it's all going to happen suddenly, like the book of Revelation says. It happens suddenly. And I don't know how long that's going to take between the first 4. I'm thinking a week or 2, like a week. It can happen in one day. The first 4 trumpets can be a one-day event, right? I don't know. But then we have 5 months. Or, you know what? Here's another thing. That can have you can have a big break. A big break in between the first 4 and the 5th one, can't you? There's nothing that says otherwise. I mean, we're guessing on this. Then you have a 5-month period where there is a locust stinging the creatures, and then you have the war that takes place. It could be this kind of scenario here. You guys feeling me? This is another scenario. I'm going to leave this because I've never drawn this yet. This is a possibility. And when I say the first few trumpets, I'm serious. I could even make that circle even smaller here. Okay. So the first 4 trumpets could be like that. 1 to 4, 5, 6. There we go. So there's your 5th trumpet. Here's your 6th trumpet. And here's your 1 to 4. I'm not saying it's this way. I'm saying this is another way to look at it. 1 to 4 is right there. And there's a break. That's another way to look at it. Either the first 4 trumpets happen at the beginning of the tribulation, or that happens at the end. But one thing we do know is that there's a 5-month period for the 5th trumpet, and that happens, and it lasts for 5 months, and more than likely it's towards the end. So this could be the trumpets blow at the beginning of the Great Tribulation period. The trumpets, the first 4 blow at the beginning, and then we have a big break, and towards the end, I'm trying to see how this would work with this thing right here. So the effects of the trumpets last for a long time. And that would give us this kind of the effects of the trumpet are going to be lasting. In other words, the mark of the beast is easily going to be implemented if 1/3 of the ships are destroyed, right? Let's do a dotted line. Let's do it thinner. So you see the effects of that. I don't even know where to put this now. All of this is the tribulation period. This line in particular is the tribulation period. So yeah. You got a break in between the first four and the fifth. I've heard that. I think I've read that in some commentaries before. That I'm not the only one that thinks that might be a possibility. That the trigger that's going to really put the Antichrist in power, the trigger that's really going to put forth the mark of the beast and turn the economic system. We've been waiting for the economic crash for a long, long time. Why hasn't it happened? They keep printing money. When's it going to finally break? The trigger to finally make all this happen will be the first four trumpets. That's one theory. Are you guys with me? Yeah, that's at the end. That's at the end. I think the mark of the beast is definitely going to be, people are going to be taking the mark way before it's called a mark. People are going to be taking the thing before the Antichrist shows. The last 3.5 years really solidifies everything that's developing right now. The mark of the beast, the controlling tyranny of a dictator. It's all going to really be manifested in the last 3.5 years, which is what we're talking about. And in the fifth trumpet over here, whoever said that, this is where, the mark of the beast is well going to be in operation by then. Well in effect by then. By the time we get over here in the fifth trumpet, the creatures that come are going to be tormenting those who are not sealed by God. Now, actually, it doesn't say mark of those who are. Actually, you know what? There's going to be people that are not taking the mark of the beast, that are not sealed by God, who still don't want to take the mark of the beast. You know that, right? There's a lot of groups who are anti-government groups who don't want to take any government mark. Right? Most of them are going to be forced because they want food. Obviously, they want food, so they're going to be forced. There's still going to be resistance that are not Christians. There's going to be people resisting, the tyranny of the government who deny Jesus. But the fifth seal is about tormenting people who are not sealed by God. I think that's what it says. People who are not sealed by God. So let's go look at that real quick. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but that's okay. Revelation 9, it says right here, they should not hurt the grass, the green things or trees, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So you can assume that those are people with the mark of the beast. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to have the mark of the beast. These creatures may be tormenting people and getting them to repent too. It may be something God's using on some people to force them to call upon him and ask Christ to save them. It's possible. God did the same thing in the book of Numbers to punish Israel for complaining and grumbling, and he did it to punish and chastise them. And then when they repented, God pulled back the stinging creatures. So it's possible. I'm not saying that's a fact. I'm not saying that's the only reason he's sending these stinging creatures. I'm not saying that he's not going to do it for people who are perishing and lost, obviously. But it could be partially to help people repent as well. Back over here. So that's where we're at so far, guys. That's what we got so far. I hope you guys are growing with me. I'm not saying I have this down. I'm not saying I understand it completely. I'm not saying I showed you several different options to believe and to look at. Any of them could be true. I don't really know.